communication between front and back of the house because of the segregation of dining rooms and all this kind of stuff. And the vice president of the group used to be the general manager at Nashville, and I felt like I had a good rapport with him, as I did. And I sent him this email that was like, "Hey, I'm here doing whatever I can for the good of this team and for the good of everything. And what I can't do is I can't fight somebody to make myself valid."
Understood.
You know what I mean? Like, I can't have somebody tell me to stay in my lane when, like,
this is my lane.
Operations of the restaurant. I can't have somebody like say, because I'm the general manager, that like the kitchen is an aspect of the kitchen that I'm also responsible for managing or whatever. Like just stupid. My dick's bigger than yours
ego shit.
Stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a waste of my time if this is what we're gonna do. And he had a really diplomatic response about everybody coming together, and I just needed him to back me up. It's like, look, this is your direct superior. I need you to come to my aid and say, hey, you need to listen to him. We need to change the way that we're serving food, because the way we're serving food is not working. And it took me like 3 weeks just to get that. Just to get like Kenny to understand what I was saying about what needed to change and why it wasn't changing. And that was just way harder than it should have been.
Yes.
And the whole thing was just, it was really tough. It was really, really difficult. Nobody was happy. Everybody was working too much. Things weren't happening the way that they were, the way anybody's expectations were going.
Mm-hmm.
I was a year sober at this time. I'm going through like the most personal stress and redevelopment that I've ever gone through in my life. So I'm especially volatile, and the biggest struggle that I've had in my management career up to that point, and continuing to this day, is how I can communicate effectively with other people. You and I share a common experience of being in environments where speaking directly is normal.
Yes.
Unnecessary elaboration, just like direct communication is essential.
Yes.
For things to happen in the time that they need to happen for things to go forward.
Yeah.
And I definitely never. It took me a long time to get to the point where most people that did not have that kind of exploration and that kind of experience, most people just took that as me being a piece of shit asshole, talking either down to somebody or having an attitude about something or whatever. It took me a really long time to understand that was a major source of disconnect between what I'm trying to say and like what's being heard. You know what I mean?
How you're perceived.
How I'm being perceived. Because in my mind, what I'm doing is I'm communicating as effectively as I know how.
Yes.
And trying to do so in a manner in which encourages sense of urgency and encourages focus and just the way that I didn't have like I didn't have the tools to like understand the kind of impact that what I said and did had on other people.
Heard.
And there were some pretty embarrassing things that happened there because of that. There were a couple of times where I did lose my temper and I said some things that I shouldn't have, and some other people said some things that they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But to me, like, a certain point of that has always been normal. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What wasn't normal is, physical things. And,
yeah.
I mean, even though there was parts of my story that include that, that was never normal to me.
Heard.
I knew what was happening in that time where somebody put their hands on me and what they were really doing is trying to shock my system into paying attention to what was happening in that moment.
Exactly.
You know? And I never saw anything that I said or anything that I did ever being an equivalent to that. But other people did, you know. And, you know, so there was a lot of people that at this point in time at this restaurant were, you know, okay, well, this person is doing great here, but all of these people feel like he's just a piece of shit, you know, or he's just like picking on me, or he's just like unapproachable, or is, you know, nobody ever felt comfortable enough to like directly come and talk to me about it. Yeah, you know what I mean. And I understand that. You know, I definitely do. I wish that was different. I wish that like people by and large would know what an approachable person that I have been and am, and you know, that kind of a thing. But that was just how that went down. Yeah. You know.
It seems to be the same consensus along with everybody else that worked there. Baxter kind of was saying the same shit. Like, you know, it's just what happened there. It wasn't.
And so, I mean, it's interesting too because, you know, Baxter was a part of that as well. Dano was a part of that. Like, that company at a certain point made a decision that, hey, we're not going to allow people to manage in the way that's been effective for us in the past.
Heard.
You know, and I don't think that the way that I managed was nearly as abusive as what I experienced, you know, back in the day. But the delivery system and the manner in which you communicated was perceived as being such, you know. And so they made this decision and, you know, made very little effort to kind of communicate that down the pipeline.
Heard.
You know, or allow anybody to like react to that, or you know, constructively talk about like what can be done differently, that kind of thing. Just kind of like said, hey, we're done. You know, we're finished with this. When it came to Dano, when it came to Baxter, when it came to me, ultimately, you know, I got fired from a job that I didn't want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how fucking strange is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the when I came down there after they got rid of Tyler and you know, 2 weeks into it or whatever, Sam was telling me about a meeting that they had where David just blurted out, you know, was Andrew taking the job or not? You know, and Sam was like, absolutely not. You know, he's trying to help us bridge a gap.
Yeah.
You know, doing the best he can. And I don't think that helped the perception of me at all.
Gotcha.
You know, but the irony of that was just really really strange. You know, like I got you know, let go from a job that I never wanted in the first place.
That I was just trying to help out, kind of thing. Gotcha.
And like Kenny and them, they did, you know, made it a point to like. I mean, they weren't complete pieces of shit to me, but they made it a point to like let me know what was up, like why this was happening, kind of thing, you know. And I had a lot of feelings about it, you know. Most of those I've had the opportunity to work through, which has been great. And one of the biggest ones, like right off the rip, was like, I mean. He put me asked me to help with this situation, and I communicated almost immediately what I felt like were some major roadblocks to getting anything done, and nothing was done about that. Yeah. And now you're firing me for being upset, you know? Like, what fucking logic does that have to, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, you put me in this situation. You know,
like I didn't have to come down here. You called me, and I came down here, like out of good faith.
And you know, and like, look, man. At the end of the day, you can take an experience like that and spin it any way you want to rationalize any type of behavior that you want. And I didn't want to feel like a victim about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Seems like you just accepted responsibility. Like, I probably had something to do with it. Walked away.
I definitely had something to do with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I definitely talked to one of the assistant managers there, like the piece of shit that I thought that he was.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? I didn't have a reason not to.
I get you.
In my mind. You know?
You know, in this industry, we ride the line of passion and business.
Yeah.
And, you know, most times that just doesn't mesh. I don't know how we've made it this far, to be honest with you. But it's pretty remarkable and at the same time very scary. Because there's people putting their emotion, their whole lives into a place. But then you have to make money to make that business up, survive.
Probably the most valuable thing that I learned from that was that this duality that you speak about passion and business, that at the end of the day, what my biggest problem is that I was upset and frustrated that people didn't take things as seriously as I did. That they weren't as concerned as I was about what was wrong, about how to do something. People were just like happy doing their own little thing or whatever. Mm-hmm. That really upset me. That my level of expectation wasn't everybody else's level of expectation, and that's totally unreasonable.
Yeah.
It's a completely insane notion.
Not very empathetic. So you think you're like, well, that guy has 2 kids, so that immediately takes this care that I think he needs to have down 10%. Mm-hmm. Because he's got actual human beings to worry
Probably
about.
A lot more than 10%.
Exactly. No, yeah.
But yeah, and that was so. What really the best thing that happened was that situation happening that way, because it was happening like around the same time that I was doing my 4th step with my sponsor, which is like the most intense part of the recovery process. And so all of a sudden I have this major resentment that I need to get rid of.
Heard.
For like all these people and all this shit and all this stuff,
Did you think about going back to drinking?
No, okay. I never did. It never crossed my mind. So I really, really knew that going back to drinking was only going to make
it worse.
Exponentially worse.
Heard.
So much worse. But I was really fortunate that here's a great situation that's going to force me to go even further with this and discovering things about what I do and why that I'd never thought about before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
So I had uncovered some real blind spots for me. Just about how I interact as a person and stuff, So it was really great in hindsight.
I mean, I think we all have it as chefs. That happens a lot,
Yeah.
I've had similar situations, and but you do dwell on it for a long time, and I'm sure you still think about it to this day.
I think I've made my peace with most of it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like Sean and I had never really had gotten the opportunity to unpack that.
Yeah.
I've gotten to do it with just about everybody else.
Gotcha.
And there was a lot of stuff happening around that time. Sean had announced that he was leaving the company maybe 2 months after or a month after I got let go.
Heard.
Which was not the plan. It was supposed to be later. Mm-hmm. And when I got back to Nashville, I really just wanted to get together and have some coffee and like talk it through and unpack it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't something that he could do at that time. It was just too busy and things were whatever it was he had to deal with, And by the time that he reached out to me and was like, hey, let's go get some coffee, like I can deal with this now, sort of thing, or whatever. I had already moved back to San Francisco and was actively opening Angler.
Okay.
And that.
Did you get that call before you left Husk, and were you like, okay, now I got a backup plan if this goes to shit?
No,
or were you always planning on going to Open Angler?
I wasn't planning on going to Open Angler at all. What happened is I took my first vacation in my adult life in April